Welcome to Guidance for Better Life. My guest today is going to share how she avoided a very serious and actually potentially very dangerous situation on the highway where other people may be involved by listening to the nudges and the guidance that she received from the divine that she heard with her heart. She's a professional equipment operator and knows how to check equipment extremely well, better than most. And her headset, everything was precise, ready to take off and go down the highway to move to another state. Yet something in her heart kept saying, not now, do not go. So I think today you'll find this story very interesting. And for those of you that have learned to trust your heart, it may reinforce that. And some of you that never trust anything but your logical brain, it'll give you something to think about, another way to maybe live. So thank you. Hi, Rebecca.
Hi, Del.
Rebecca, this is Rebecca Vitara, and she's a good friend and an author. You wrote a story that I think our audience is going to find it fascinating. You drove heavy equipment for many years, right? How
Yes,
long
sir.
did you drive? Like what are those, like front-end loaders and...
19 years of heavy construction equipment. Bulldozers, excavators, loaders.
And these are not the little toy ones.
No,
Us
these
pretend
are
this is the big stuff.
the large construction equipment that you'll see on sites that build buildings and malls and your highway
A
equipment.
lot of them are sort of that caterpillar color.
Lots of caterpillars, yes.
Were you involved in doing a tunnel? You actually ran a major piece of equipment where you drilled under a bay and drilled a tunnel out for cars, right?
Yes, sir. It was a 32-foot diameter drilling machine.
Wow. Just grinding away underwater up to another place.
Yes, sir.
To where there was going to be a road under there, right?
Yes, they put a tunnel underneath the Allegheny River in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
And you operated that equipment.
Yes, I was
Not 24 hours a day, but
I was one of the 4 operators.
one of only 4.
Yes, sir.
And the reason I bring this up for the audience is you know how to check equipment.
Yes, we're always very thorough. Before you operate a piece of equipment or before you do something, you always do an inspection. And then once you're done at the end of the day, you walk around the equipment again to make sure everything's fine.
And it's partly safety, because people get hurt with that type of equipment,
Yes.
and partly repairing that kind of equipment delays the job, and it's also very expensive.
Yes.
So if you don't check the oil and fluids and all the different things that I'm not even aware of, it can be a problem on the job, and it can be dangerous and even very expensive.
Yes.
I'm saying this because you were ready to move to Virginia from Pennsylvania. You had your vehicle and the trailer, everything all set. Maybe you could tell us what you checked. In other words, you know your stuff.
Yes.
What were you checking? You were ready to move down here to Virginia.
Correct.
The trailer's packed and trucked. Just for fun, give the audience an idea of all the things you check that we generally don't check. We just hop in and go if we have gas. But you're much more thorough than the average driver. What were some of the things you double-checked?
I checked all the fluids in the vehicle. I checked the...
And there's multiple fluids.
Yes, and I checked also on the trailer all the tarps and the tie downs and made sure that the load was secure,
Okay.
that nothing would shift or none of the tarps would blow off. And the ratchet binders, made sure everything was tight.
Okay.
Checked the trailer connection to the truck to make sure that all the safety pins were in line, and then that the truck was connected with the electrical system in the brakes.
Okay, and I think in your story you said tire pressure,
Yes.
lights. You were more thorough than most travelers.
Yes, because whenever you're hauling something with the trailer, there's some extra weight there, and your vehicle doesn't have the same stopping response time as whenever it's by itself.
Yeah, it's a little more complicated than hopping in a small car.
Yes.
So you're getting ready to go, and logically,
Everything's set.
everything's right. You checked, double-checked. I think you said in your story, you're burning daylight, and you wanted, I think it was a 5-hour drive down
Yes.
here to Virginia, where you were
Correct.
moving. And why didn't you just take off? Everything looked good.
It was perfect. The timing to be on the road to avoid traffic.
Okay.
The weather was perfect, and it's like, I want to go. But there was something inside that said, no, don't go. And it's like, you want to blow it off. You want to just ignore it. But that feeling, that nudge, that don't go. And I thought the only thing that I didn't check were the brake pads.
I wonder if it was logic, or did the Holy Spirit now say, check the brakes?
The Holy Spirit said, check the brakes.
Essentially, that's what
Yes.
is happening. So first,
Yes.
don't go. Something's not right. I think that was the title of your story. And then you got a little more information that you still credit the divine with kind of suggesting the brakes.
Yes.
Okay, so what did you do then? In other words, first off, did this win or did the heart win?
Oh, the heart won.
No question.
Never a question.
Okay,
The heart won.
okay. So you have a very strong connection with the divine where through years of doing these types of things, you absolutely believe when you get something like
Believe and trust.
that. Trust. Not just believe, but you trusted it.
Yes.
And part of trust is timing, and maybe check the brakes in a couple of weeks from now. But when you get a nudge from the divine, as we've learned down here over many years, the timing's very important, especially in this case.
It's very important. Sometimes it's life and death.
Yeah, the timing.
On the
Literally.
timing. And there's been a number of times that I'd get a little nudge, and it's like, I'll just get to it later.
And
and
later doesn't work out.
Later
so well.
does not work
Yeah.
out. So I've learned, you trust.
Okay. So you trusted, and what'd you do then? You took your vehicle somewhere. Share that part of the story if you would.
I called a friend of mine, and I took my vehicle over to his garage. And he pulled the front wheels off and installed the new brake pads. And after installing those and putting the tires back on, we had to bleed the brake lines.
And for somebody that doesn't know what that is, what's pretty, some people don't, they just hop in a car and drive, like I do now. But I used to do that when I was younger. Is that when you push
the pedal?
down the brake?
Yes, you have someone inside the cab pushing the pedal, and then someone is outside opening up the little brake cylinder to let any air out of the brake lines.
So you don't want air in those lines.
Correct.
So how many, I know the story, how many pumps on the brake until you knew there was a problem?
3 pumps on the brake.
Wow.
And my friends started yelling, let off, let off, let off. One of the brake lines broke.
Could you have made it to Virginia with only 3 pumps of the brake?
Never.
Maybe not very far.
No.
Maybe just up in the freeway, the expressway. And the first time you had to hit those brakes?
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
What did you feel like when that happened?
I thanked God immediately.
You felt that was the connection between, like God and the Holy Spirit knew that the brake lines were going to fail?
Yes.
And you immediately thanked Him for that?
For His protection. And
your protection, I wonder how many other people potentially more than your protection, you and others, especially with a heavy load in a trailer.
Exactly. You know, traveling up and down some of the hills going through Pennsylvania and West Virginia and Maryland, how many other families are out on the highway? You lose control when you don't know how you're going to react to the situation. You don't know which direction the truck and trailer are going to go. And anybody around me, had I lost my brakes, were potential danger.
Could have been catastrophic, potentially.
Yes.
And you really credit God through His Holy Spirit, giving you that whispers in there saying, something's not right, do not go.
Most definitely. With everything I have.
No doubt.
No doubt.
Because some people think it was just just maybe your head figured it out, but your head was saying something different, like, let's go, it's ready, the weather's good, everything's good. But
Yes.
your heart, and the heart is where, for the folks that are not as familiar with this, when we talk about heart, we're talking about listening with our higher self, that divine part of us, soul. And God can speak to the head, but often, in fact, quite often, he speaks to the heart. People might call it a nudge, kind of got a feeling about something, whisperings of the heart. But I don't know what you would call it, but you definitely felt it more down in what we call the heart than up here. And do you believe that prevented potentially a serious accident for you and maybe others?
I believe with every fiber of my being,
Wow.
and I believe that communication with the divine, and I listen to it on a daily basis.
Do you think anybody can learn that?
Yes, anybody can learn, as
Okay,
long
well,
as you're willing to listen.
listen. And that's what you were doing essentially. You weren't listening so much with the ears, you were listening
With my
with the heart. And you've done this for many years. I've known you for a long time. And it's a skill set that you can get. Everybody has the potential, but you can also develop it.
Yes.
Does this strengthen your trust in what your heart's telling you?
It strengthens it 100-fold.
Yeah. And when you have many experiences where, like this, and other experiences where it turns out that trusting your heart was a good decision, you get, I believe, as strong as you are, just rock solid. That was going to trump whatever this was telling you.
Had I been stubborn and listened to what I wanted to do,
That's the other thing. It wasn't just logic. You had an agenda. You wanted to get going while it was still light and the weather was good.
yes,
So that's not only what your brain was telling you, you also had something you wanted personally.
yes,
And so that's even more amazing. You overrode the logic and also your personal, you had a goal, you had an agenda, let's get there. And you even overrode that because you've learned to trust your heart.
yes,
Now there's more to this story. Later in this story, you listed all the things that prevented, one, an accident possibly. But let's say you did not have an accident and you're out of town. The mechanic you went to was your friend.
yes,
And while he's working on your vehicle, were you able to get a ride back to your house?
yes. He was able to take me back.
Eat your own food, the safety of your own house.
Yes.
What if you had broken down, and even if it did not cause an accident, and say you're now about 50 or 100 miles away from town?
Sure. I would have had to have called a tow truck,
There's an expense and an inconvenience.
paying for the tow truck, finding a garage that would be open.
And I think in the story that you felt you could trust, because you really
Correct.
trusted your friend.
Yes, knowing who that mechanic is, and like you just said, trusting them to do the quality work, and then also the time to make those repairs, maybe having to stay over somewhere and get a hotel room.
Another expense and inconvenience.
Yes,
Maybe break down along a stretch of the road that you might not have felt as safe,
correct.
or you felt safe at home.
There were a number
It's incredible.
of hurdles there that were all
Avoided.
correct.
It was
Yes.
all avoided. So not only was the safety factor quite amazing, but it was so much more convenient and even cost you less money by following what Spirit was telling you. Wow. Wow. That's
He
really
always
cool.
knows what we need. And if we
Yeah.
learn to follow.
No matter how smart or how good you are with the equipment, I don't think anybody but maybe God knows 3 pumps and those brakes are shot.
Exactly. There's no way I could have ever, with all the inspection that I did going over that, I never would have found that.
Yeah, it's just some things you don't know. But he did.
Yes.
Very cool. Thank you very much.
Thank
Is there
you.
anything else you'd like to add, Rebecca?
Just trust what you get. Follow.
Yes. And then you'll build more and more trust. When you see when you have an experience where you trust your heart, and you won't always have this dramatic experience. It might be something real simple. But when you learn to trust your heart and you start seeing that that was a good choice, it builds, like Rebecca's, rock solid now on her trust. And over time, when you see trusting your heart turn out to be prudent, you can build that trust. And it's definitely something worth developing. What you're really doing is developing the ability to listen to divine guidance. That's really the gist of this story. Rebecca has learned, we say trust your heart, to be a little more formal. She's learned to trust divine guidance. And in this case, it's quite stunning, but it can be in much simpler cases, types of food, people you want to hang with, maybe what doctor to go to. It can apply in just about any area of life. If you'd like more information about her book, or there's a little bit more in her story that she wrote than in our interview. It's in Book 5, one of the chapters of Book 5, Testimonies of God's Love. And thank you for watching today. I hope this gives you something to think about and maybe to consider growing in this area of trusting the divine guidance. And I hope this show blessed you today. Thank you.